What's it really like to work on a NASCAR Winston Cup team? You'll find out as we spend a week in the life of the Morgan McClure Kodak Chevrolet team. Dale Jarrett is one of Winston Cup's brightest new stars. We'll visit with Dale and relive his first Winston Cup win. Stock cars at Indianapolis? A.J. Foyt took his Copenhagen Olds around the Brickyard. Is this a look into the future? It was NASCAR's first super speedway, and she's still too tough to tame. NASCAR Rewind takes a look back at the early days of Darlington.
Hello everyone, I'm Benny Parsons. Welcome to this edition of NASCAR Video Magazine. In this and every issue, we'll take you to the front row of the action as well as behind the scenes in a way that's not available anywhere else. In addition to our cover stories, Anita Bevins will have a special interview with someone who married into royalty, Patty Petty, the wife of Kyle Petty and daughter-in-law of the King, Richard Petty. Bob Jenkins will take a look at the Busch Grand National Tour, the racing series that is producing more Winston Cup drivers than any other. Our tech report will focus on power steering and the man who brought it to Winston Cup 10 years ago, Jeff Bodine. The King, Richard Petty, has announced 1992 will be his final season behind the wheel. We'll take you to this historic press conference for an exclusive look at extended comments that weren't seen anywhere else. And once again, Darrell Waltrip will be on hand to help you drive like a pro. There may be a few other surprises along the way, but let's get to it. At the end of each issue of NASCAR Video Magazine, I've asked for suggestions of what you'd like to see. And the number one request is, what's it really like to work on a Winston Cup team? What does a crew have to go through to prepare to race? Well, in this issue, we're going to show you. The Morgan McClure Kodak team, based in beautiful Abingdon, Virginia, allowed us to spend a week with them as they prepare to race in Charlotte. It's your chance to come along for an insider's look at what it's really like to work for the Daytona 500 championship team.
I couldn't describe to you how good you feel like when you win a Daytona 500 or you win a race or you run good. You know, it's, you don't have to worry about getting motivated or getting up to come to work because you get out of bed and you want to go to work. And it's like people that just work an ordinary job. I don't see how they, I don't see what draws them out of the bed anymore. And I know if I didn't do this, I don't even know how I could get up.
Everybody makes sacrifices. If you want to win, if you want to be successful, you got to do what it takes. And sometimes it's the task is large and it takes a lot, and you have to give up a lot of other things that you'd rather be doing, maybe not rather be doing, but that you could be doing that are just not as important as winning. And winning's everything to me and to this race team, and we're committed to it.
While crew member Jeffrey Ellis finally goes home, the rest of the crew is yet to return to Abingdon from 2 grueling days of testing. It's even later when the truck finally gets back to the shop, and in the surrounding hills, the crew finds their way to their homes for what will be a quick hello to their families and a short night's sleep. The crew arrives early. An extraordinary amount of work lies ahead. The team gets right to it, moving like a fine-tuned machine. Nothing needs to be said. Each man knows his job. After every race or test session, like the one the team has just completed at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, that's the site of this weekend's race, the entire car is disassembled from end to end. Virtually no part, no screw, no bolt, no cable is left untouched. Within minutes after the team has arrived, the engine is pulled and put on the dynamometer under the scrutiny of wily veteran Chief Engine Builder Shelton Pittman, better known as Run. The dyno is perhaps the most important single tool Winston Cup teams use to test engines in their never-ending search for horsepower. All told, the team will be bringing 6 engines to Charlotte. And while this one is on the dyno, the men in the engine room continue work on finishing the others in time to get the rig on the road later this afternoon to head to Charlotte. Close to 3 hours after getting to work, the team finally takes a short break.
If you don't have a slick body and a big motor and a decent driver, you can go to front. But if you got a good driver and he ain't got nothing to drive, he ain't going to front. So it's 100% team effort.
We got, what, 25, 28 people here? Figure on a 20-man team, 40 hours a week, that's 800 man-hours.
Yeah.
And everything clicks together and comes together all at one time for the team to leave and go to the race.
We're here not because of all the money we're making, but because we like what we're doing.
Yeah, you gotta
Like
love
to see
it.
that team effort come through.
The crew gets back to work, and crew chief Tony Glover checks on cars being readied for races down the road. All told, the Morgan McClure team has in excess of a dozen cars. The crew works steadily through the morning and into the afternoon. The truck needs to be loaded and gone before the end of the day. It's a battle against Murphy's Law. Every part must be perfect, and it must be perfectly measured, calibrated, and installed. Make no mistake about it. While this is precision work, it's also tough, physical work. And the hours away from friends and families aren't only long, they're hard. All the pieces have come together, and finally, the engine is dropped back in the car.
Oh man, both in it too. Move, Paul.
A crew member calls out, "Fire in the hole!" and the engine roars to life. While the work at the shop is critical, the true test comes at the racetrack. Later in this edition of NASCAR Video Magazine, we'll join the Morgan McClure Kodak Chevrolet team in the garage area of the Charlotte Motor Speedway and let you see what it's like to work in the Winston Cup garage area. There's a new team being put together for the 1992 season that many are already calling a potential super team. As a matter of fact, the owner of this team has been to a few Super Bowls himself. Now, for a super team, you need a super young driver, and he's Dale Jarrett. By winning the Champion Spark Plug 400, Dale Jarrett became one of Winston Cup's newest heroes. His battle with Davey Allison on the final lap was a classic.
Davey Allison battles back on the outside. It's going to be a photo finish. They touch coming down through the triangle at the line. Who wins it? I believe Jarrett.
For Dale, that win was a real dream come true. But it wasn't without tough years and hard work to get to that moment. Even though he comes from one of auto racing's most well-known and best-liked families, with his father Ned already in the Hall of Fame, Dale still had to prove himself on the racetrack. From 1982 through 1987, Dale was a regular on the Busch National Tour, placing in the top 6 of the final point standings each year. In 1987, Dale made the move to the Winston Cup Series, running in 24 races with a couple of top 10 finishes. In 1988 and 1989, Dale ran the full Winston Cup schedule, driving primarily for Cale Yarborough's Hardy's team. As the 1990 season opened, Dale found himself without a ride in Winston Cup, but still running very well with the Busch Series. In April, Neil Bonney was injured in a racing accident in the Trans-South 500. When it was determined Neil would have to step out of the car, the Wood brothers made the call to Dale Jarrett to fill the seat of their famous number 21. By the end of the 1990 season, the team was coming on strong. Dale finished 4th in Atlanta, the final race of the year, his best career finish to that point. Just before Dale's big win in Michigan, it was announced Dale would leave the Wood brothers in 1992 to drive for a new team being formed by Washington Redskins coach Joe Gibbs with Jimmy Maycar to serve as crew chief. I had a chance to visit with Dale to talk about his future as well as the road he had to travel to make it to the top. And Dale, do you have to pinch yourself to realize where you are?
Yeah, every once in a while you feel like this is just a dream happening because everything has come together so quickly, so to speak. You know, it's been a long time getting here, but things are going just exactly like I would have them if I were dreaming up something to go right in my life and in my career. So it's just wonderful, these things happening, and I just want to be able to take advantage of the situations and enjoy the life that I'm having right now.
When and where did you run your first race?
I ran my first race in Hickory, North Carolina in 1978, which was quite a while ago now. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but I had never been in a race car before other than just a couple of practice laps. Although I'd been around them for years and years and years, I never had the opportunity to get in and drive one. And I'd worked on them a little bit, but didn't know much about it. But we built a limited sportsman car, we being Andy Petrie, who's now the crew chief for Harry Gant, and Jimmy Newsom, who owns Newsom Tire in Newton, were high school friends of mine, and they decided to build a race car, and I jumped in, and it was a piece of work, to say the least.
You've been around racing all your life. Is driving a race car all you've ever wanted to do?
Well, I thought that from the time that I was probably 3 or 4 years old. Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. And then Dad retired from racing when I was only 10, so we got into some other things as far as playing golf and some other sports growing up. And as I attended Newton Conover High School, I had the opportunity to play a number of other sports in football, basketball, and baseball. So these were things that I had an interest in too, and wasn't around racing as much then. And of course, didn't know a lot about the cars, but it still was something that I always thought that I wanted to try, and I wanted just to get that opportunity one time to see if it was something that I liked or not. And having no idea of the rush that it gives you and the amount of competition that is out there, because that's what I've thrived on all my life, is playing some kind of sport or something. And it didn't matter if we were in the backyard or on a field playing in something for the high school. I wanted to win whatever we were doing.
What was the most important, the experience you got in the Busch Series, or the fact that you learned how to work on a race car and learn just what goes into a race car?
Well, I think the Busch Series is a great series. It gives you the opportunity to run a lot of the tracks that you're going to be running in Winston Cup. The cars are very similar, and you're racing against a lot of the guys a lot of the times that are on the Winston Cup Series, so you learn that. And that's the way that I always looked at that in racing against them. There were a lot of the guys that complained about, well, they come in and take the money at these places where we have opportunity to win money, but I looked at it that they were Winston Cup drivers and the best in the world for a reason, and those are the guys I wanted to learn from. You know, they didn't get there just for no reason. They had some talent and they knew what they were doing, so that's where I wanted to learn from. But as far as, is that what it takes with to work hard, I think, yeah, you've got to work hard and know something about these race cars to become successful. You can't just sit down in there and try to relate something to your crew chief without knowing a little bit about what you're talking about. And I think that's helped me along the way to be able to set up my own cars and work with them and put them together and know what makes them operate.
1989, you ran the Winston Cup circuit. 1990 started. You was back on the outside looking in. It had to be hard to take.
It was difficult, most difficult time in my life, I guess. And that, as difficult as it was for me, I think for my family it was even more so. Kelly went through a lot with me feeling like that I could get the job done, but didn't have a ride in the Winston Cup Series, and it was back to my Busch Grand National car. I was very fortunate that I had that to fall back on and still be able to be around the tracks and stay visible to the people around in the sport. So, but it was awfully difficult for me to try to understand what was happening, why I wasn't in a Winston Cup car, because I thought that I'd proven that I could drive the car. I just needed the opportunity and the right equipment, just like so many other people. But I knew that these things were happening for a reason. It's just kind of tough at times to realize what that reason is. And then the break came with the unfortunate accident for Neil Bonnet in the Wood Brothers car at Darlington, that he was injured there, and I got the call, and it's been the one break that I guess everyone needs a break somewhere along the way, and this is the one that has given me what I needed in Winston Cup racing. We went on to get the first win here in 1991 with the Wood Brothers, and I couldn't have been happier to win a race with somebody and help them get back into victory lane.
The win in Michigan. Tell us about your thoughts those last few laps, knowing you had a shot to win your first race.
It's hard to describe what I was thinking because I was concentrating so hard on what I needed to do. I think what I was thinking was that I needed to keep driving the line that I'd been driving, that was working, that was keeping Davey Allison behind me, and I could see that his car wasn't wanting to work on the top of the racetrack. And if he was going to pass me on the inside, he was either going to wreck the both of us or he was going to go down in the infield, one of the two, because I was going to keep that line. And that's all that I wanted to do, was not try to make the car do something that it wasn't capable of doing at that time. I just wanted to do the things that I'd been doing and get to that opportunity on that last lap to win the race. And you don't really think that you can probably out horsepower Davey Allison down the straightaway. There's not many guys that can do it, and I don't know that we did it, but our car worked the best off of that fourth corner and to the start-finish line, and it was as good as anybody. And he got a little bit ahead of me, and I was thinking that, well, maybe I've messed up. There have been some guys that would have probably taken him out going into turn 3 and assured themselves of winning the race, but that wasn't the way that I wanted to do it. And as we got closer to the line and I started to gain back on him, I realized I'd done the right thing. I didn't know if I was going to beat him, but I'd still done the right thing.
It was close. Did you know you'd won?
Yeah. You say, how do you know that you win by 8 inches? But I just knew, and you've been there before, that you know that little surge that my car had gotten to the line first. And I told the guys on the radio, I said, I know that I've won. I hope NASCAR saw it that way.
Dale, in 1992, you'll be driving one of the most visible cars on the Winston Cup circuit. Are you ready to handle that?
Yeah, I think so. There's been a lot happening since the announcement, and you get a lot of fans, a lot of calls from people that weren't really stock car fans, that are Joe Gibbs fans, and they're going to be pulling for Dale Jarrett because I'm working for and with Joe Gibbs. And with the NFL involved and the interstate batteries, it's going to be quite an undertaking that we've all gotten involved in here, but I believe that I'm ready for it. I enjoy the media and working with the media. I enjoy the people that I get to meet, and I think that one of the reasons that I decided to go with this deal was the opportunities that I'm going to have in other things besides just driving the race car, in meeting people and getting to know some people at the NFL, and the opportunities that are going to be afforded to Dale Jarrett for that, and that can help my family down the road. So I'm ready for it, and I just hope that we can win a lot of races and fulfill the expectations that we all have and people have of us.
Winston Cup racing really is a family sport. There have been 3 generations of Pettys that have run in NASCAR. But it isn't just the men. In this women's page, Anita Bevins has a chance to visit with Patty Petty, the wife of Kyle Petty, and find out what it's like to be a part of racing's first family.
The 1991 season that started so well for Kyle Petty, including a big win at Rockingham, took a sudden turn when Kyle suffered serious leg injuries in this multi-car accident at Talladega in May. The summer was spent in therapy and rehabilitation before Kyle made his return to the track at Darlington in September.
For many people, being a part of the Petty family is like a fairy tale. But for Patty Petty, who married into the Petty family more than 10 years ago, it's a real-life experience. And like many real-life experiences, her life has had its share of ups and downs.
There is a definite stigma that surrounds the Petty name, and I had just grown up in a whole lot different atmosphere. My father worked 9 to 5, my mother taught school, and it is definitely different to become a wife of a family where the men travel all the time, and you pick up the slack and you run the household.
Another adjustment for Patty was facing the hordes of Kyle's fans.
Everywhere you go, they're confronted with autographs and like all the oohs and ahs, and it was a little bit different to get used to, but Kyle's mother was a great help and a great inspiration to me to keep my head on straight and how to approach it in all the right ways. And just remember, you were their wife and you took care of them and they went home with you, and the rest of it was just part of their job.
The pressures and popularity are part of the Petty magic, but there are times when Kyle's luck runs out on race day.
First of all, you leave them alone for a while. I don't think many of the wives will tell you you just go busting right in to hug their neck or hold their hand, because they tend to have some space and time to work through it themselves. They have, if it's been a problem, they've got to discuss it with the crew chief, the motorman, the car owner, go over what the problem was, place blame where necessary, and then move on. And then when you finally do get back home at night or back to the motel, then you sit down and you talk about it. And of course, the wife is always the first one to say, well, now, honey, it wasn't your fault. You know, it wasn't your fault. It was just racing, and it'll be a better week next week. And you just give him a few hours and he'll be fine.
It's hard to imagine how Patty can be so cool while Kyle is racing bumper to bumper at speeds of more than 190 miles per hour. Patty confesses when Kyle's involved in a crash, there are some tense moments for her.
I go off a little bit and I get very emotional. I stay very calm until that moment does happen. And then when it does, I lose it for a little bit until I know that he's okay, until I can hear him on my radio or an official tells me that he is coherent, he's talking, he's out of the car. But there are a few seconds in there that are very trying moments. And you just trust in the Lord that he's protected.
And once their children are grown and Patty is no longer needed at the track, she has some other goals for herself.
I would love to get into educational consulting with children and be some kind of help to mothers with little children that are suffering problems or having academic problems, and that's what my major and my doctorate's in. So.
In the meantime, it's a hectic pace for this wife and mother of 3.
Well, every day I keep hoping that there'll be 5 minutes for Patty Petty, but there just isn't at this point, and I think it's not just racing, but any mother, once she has her family and her children, she has to park her life for 18 or 20 years until she gets her little birds flown out of the nest, and then maybe she can devote more time to her husband and to herself. But right now, there doesn't seem to be any time for me.
After a tough 1991 season for the Petty family, 1992 should be filled with emotion as Patty's father-in-law, the King, makes his fan appreciation tour.
Just as the Petty family is part of NASCAR history, so is Darlington. For over 40 years, fans have loved that place almost as much as the drivers have feared it. A win at Darlington is still considered the true test of how good a driver you really are. Dr. Jerry Punch takes a look at the early days of the Southern 500.
When Harry Gant captured the Southern 500 this past September, it marked the 42nd running of NASCAR's most tradition-rich event. While Gant is NASCAR's oldest winner, Darlington is NASCAR's oldest superspeedway. While the construction of Darlington Raceway back in 1950 was the dream of Harold Brazington and Jack Ramsey, it was the fans who lived out the fantasy of watching brave new heroes drive the South's first high banks. The track was constructed as an egg-shaped oval with turns 1 and 2 600 feet shorter than turns 3 and 4. This was done to keep from disturbing Ramsey's favorite fishing pond just outside the second turn. It was this odd shape that would turn Brazington and Ramsey's dream into a nightmare for drivers. The first Southern 500 was won by Californian Johnny Mance in a 1950 Plymouth. It was the first time NASCAR's stock car division had ever run on a paved oval. One driver still active who competed in the first Southern 500 is Herschel McGriff.
Well, I do remember I put the car, got in the car, drove it to Darlington, took the headlights out, bought a lot of tires and wheels for spares from the local service station because they didn't have racing tires available at that time. I blew 10 or 11 tires, just blew them out, had to change them with a wheel wrench. I even got out of the car a couple times. The other thing, of course, I was only 22 years old. You know, that race was, I think, close to 8 hours long. The only thing I don't remember getting tired.
Believe it or not, open wheel cars ran at Darlington, with future Southern 500 winner Buck Baker winning in NASCAR's Speedway division in 1952. A two-time National Stock Car champion, Herb Thomas was the first three-time winner of the Southern 500, winning in 1951, 1954, and 1955. But the Southern 500 is more than just a race. The festival surrounding the event in the early days included beauty pageants and parades that involved the entire South Carolina community. Always held on Labor Day weekend, the event attracted legendary crowds that became part of the fabric of the early days of the sport. In 1956, another legend, Curtis Turner, won his only Southern 500 before a record crowd estimated at 70,000 fans. It was quite an upset in 1959 when a Yankee, Jim Reed from Peekskill, New York, won the 10th annual Southern 500. Another big upset came in 1961 when Nelson Stacy from Cincinnati, Ohio, made his first NASCAR win a triumph in the famed Southern 500. Stacy passed Marvin Pance, driving in relief of Fireball Roberts, with only 7 laps remaining to capture the Labor Day Classic. In 1963, Fireball Roberts won his second and final Southern 500, averaging a remarkable 129.784 miles per hour. Throughout its early days, Darlington established itself with a tradition of speed, excitement, and crowd-pleasing action. In the decades that have passed, the legend of Darlington has only grown larger. From Johnny Mance to Harry Gant, every driver will agree, she's still too tough to tame.
My win at Darlington in the 1978 Rebel 500 is still one of the biggest thrills of my career. But I'll never forget crashing all 4 races in 1974 and 1975. Today, Darlington not only plays host to the Winston Cup cars, but also a series that's enjoyed its most competitive season ever. Bob Jenkins takes us on track to the Winston Cup with NASCAR's Busch Grand National Series.
The Busch Grand National Series has a heritage that is nearly as old as NASCAR itself. Originally known as the Late Model Sportsman Division, its early champions were drivers like Mike Claypack, Ralph Earnhardt, and Ned Jarrett. Renee Charlin was a 4-time champion in the early 60s. Other legendary drivers with multiple championships include Red Farmer and Jack Ingram. In 1982, NASCAR redefined the series from drivers competing on regional tracks for national points to a national touring series of approximately 30 races per season. Today, the Busch Grand National Series has attained the status of being the 3rd most prestigious racing series in the country, behind only the Winston Cup Series and Indy cars. While many have used the series as the last stepping stone to a Winston Cup career, others like Tommy Houston, Jimmy Hensley, and Ingram have found a career racing in the Busch Grand National Series is all any driver could wish for. Competition is the key word, with each season producing records for new winners as well as different winners. On many tracks, the Busch Grand National stars have a chance to compete on an equal basis with their Winston Cup counterparts. In 1991, the series has had a great mixture of experienced veterans like Bound and Hensley finding victory lane along with exciting new winners like Kenny Wallace and Bobby Labonte. The Busch Grand National Series is a great place to spend a racing career, or use it as the final step to the Winston Cup Series.
In 1981, Jeff Bodine finished 3rd in the final Busch Grand National standings and then made the move up to Winston Cup. He brought with him an innovation that all drivers are now very thankful for. Here's our tech report.
When Charles Duryea designed the first American-built gasoline engine vehicle, the steering device used was called a tiller. Even before the steering wheel, drivers like Barney Oldfield felt the urge to compete with other drivers. In 1902, Cadillac was the first American automaker to install a steering wheel on a production vehicle. As the American auto industry evolved, many driver comforts were added, including power steering. In the early days of NASCAR, almost all race cars utilized conventional steering mechanisms. Whether they were on the dirt tracks or early superspeedways, the sport's pioneer drivers had a daredevil image that said the only power assist they wanted was horsepower. Although power steering was an option available on nearly every passenger car since the mid-60s, it was Jeff Bodine who introduced power steering to the sport in 1982.
I started out using a manual type steering. I raced that way, and I thought to myself, why don't these guys use power steering on these cars? 500-mile races, these big heavy cars, I mean, it'd be so much easier. And when I went to Cliff Stewart, Darrell Bryant was a crew chief. He said, now we know you use power steering on your late model, and I won a lot of races with it in the late model division back then. And he said, do you want it on this car? And I said, naturally, I think it'll help. And at first the other teams, the other drivers, crew chiefs thought, well, look, Bodine needs it. He's just a little guy, doesn't have any muscle to drive these big cars without power steering. So they kind of gave me the wimp syndrome. But it wasn't long, and Bobby Allison is probably the reason why. He put it on his car and proved that it was better. It let you set the car up better. The front end settings were better, so the car handled better. And it's, you know, after they saw he used it and liked it, more and more guys kept putting it on, and right now everyone runs it. It's 100% on every car out here, and I'm kind of proud of that. It's something that I brought into the sport, and it's really extended the career of a lot of drivers. And who's that guy that's been winning here lately? Harry Gant. Probably extended his career a little bit too.
In the early days of its high-performance use, the power steering mechanisms weren't always reliable, as evidenced by Cale Yarborough's famous blown power steering unit while leading late in the 1985 Southern 500. Bill Elliott made the move below Cale and went on to win the first Winston Million. Today, the units rarely fail.
It's almost fail-safe. Very, very few problems with it. The manufacturers have built pumps just for racing. They modify them for racing. The reservoirs, the lines, even the fluid, everything is just about fail-safe now. The steering boxes come right off stock cars. You get different ratios, different stiffness or softness to the steering. You can really adjust it to any driver's needs, and I don't know anyone that has any problems with them right now. They're really a good system.
With a number of Winston Cup competitors now driving well past the age of 40, Bodine's innovation would have to be considered one of the most important additions to the sport in the past 10 years.
Earlier, we had a chance to spend time with the Morgan McClure team at the shops as they prepared to race at Charlotte. Now let's catch up with the team at the racetrack and give you a chance to spend time on the other side of the fence in the Winston Cup garage area. After unloading, the first order of business is the first phase of inspection by NASCAR officials.
Well, the first thing we do, we go to the gas pump. We fill the car up with, racing gas. We go through the scales and weigh it. All Winston Cup cars have to weigh 3,500 pounds total weight. They have to weigh 1,600 pounds on the right side. Then they got the templates that you go through. You know, our cars are Chevrolet Lumina, but not all Chevrolet Luminas are the same. They want our cars to look like stock appearing cars, so they have just an aluminum template to simulate the shape of all the cars, and they have to meet that template within 3/8 of an inch. So any place you don't meet it, you have to trim, shave, or what have you to make it meet NASCAR's requirements. Yeah, right now we're ready. You know, we've got the sticker on our windshield, which means that it meets all NASCAR requirements, and right now we're just waiting for our first practice session.
He may not be with the crew all week, but make no mistake about it, Ernie Irvin's very much a part of this team. Together, they make a unique fit. The crew and the owners, calm, meticulous men. Ernie, brash and aggressive. opposites that complement each other and make for a winning combination. Ernie's debriefed after every practice. I had a chance to talk to Tony and Ernie. Test session's over. What did you learn?
We learned that the track is extremely slick and we got a lot of work to do yet.
What does he mean the track's slick?
Well, you know, Benny, you've been around this place a lot, and usually the place you have all the trouble here at Charlotte is in turn 3 and 4. Well, we're not having a whole lot of trouble through 3 and 4 right now, but man, I about wreck every lap down there in 1 and 2.
Having planned their strategy to attack the handling problem, they're back at it first thing in the morning, working on the rear end, cranking in wedge. You never stop chasing the track, particularly at Charlotte. That is, searching for the right combination in the setup. Wedge, tires, weight. We're trying to match the conditions on the track. That changes from day to day, sometimes even hour to hour, depending on the weather and the racing that's taking place on the track. In contrast to the previous day's heat, race day dawns cold, damp, and dreary, and it's threatening to rain. The team gets right to it. They have their work cut out for them, having qualified 16th in the 20-car field. Davey Allison and the Haviland team are on the pole. The rain does indeed stop, and finally it's time to go racing. Along with the tension, there's a sense of relief when the car is finally on the racetrack. All the preparation behind you, now it's time to figure out, is your car fast enough to beat all the other cars on this given day? Ernie charged, but he couldn't find a way around Elliott. It's one thing to run with Austin Bill from Dawsonville, another thing getting around him. Nobody looked to stop Davey Allison this day.
Whenever you come home with 5th best car, you don't feel very good about it because, you know, you come to be number 1, and today we won, but hopefully next Sunday we will be.
The crowd is long gone by the time the team pulls out. Ahead lies a 4-hour drive back to Abingdon. Then tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., they'll be back at the shop, pulling the car out and slapping the engine back on the dyno. By Wednesday, they'll be loaded up and headed out for the next race down the road. Yeah, it's tough, but not a one of them would have it any other way. They're racers. The Winston Cup Series has a chance to compete on the best racetracks in America. But for a long time, fans have wondered, why not a stock car race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway? Well, I'm not sure there'll ever be a stock car race at the Brickyard, but I do know that A.J. Fort recently turned in a few laps there in his Copenhagen Oldsmobile, and Bob Jenkins was on hand for that special event.
For more than 75 years, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway has played host to the Indianapolis 500, the premier event in the world for open-wheel racing. While it's true Indy-type cars have run at Darlington, a Winston Cup stock car never had the opportunity to take laps at Indianapolis until now. While at the Speedway filming a television commercial, NASCAR and Indy legend A.J. Foyt just couldn't resist the opportunity to take his Copenhagen Oldsmobile for a few hot laps around the Brickyard. While the car was set up for Talladega testing, A.J. still turned in some impressive laps.
I think he could run probably 165 or maybe close to 170 miles an hour here. You know, this track would be pretty close to similar like Ontario Motor Speedway used to be, and he'd probably run 170 or faster.
From 1971 until 1980, NASCAR drivers competed at the Ontario Motor Speedway in California, a track that was identical to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Cale Yarborough held the Ontario track record for stock cars at 156.190 miles an hour. A.J. was a two-time winner at the California track, as was Bobby Allison, and NASCAR Video's own Benny Parsons. The track was closed following Benny's win in 1980 to make way for California land development. There is no doubt all racing fans would love to see a stock car race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway one day. But at this time, there are no such plans to stage such an event. But for one day, it was great just to imagine that it just could happen.
Darrell Waltrip is a driver who has found the best way around a racetrack 81 times in his Winston Cup career. In this issue of NASCAR Video Magazine, Darrell once again will show you how to drive like a pro.
How many times have you done a slow burn as the hot dog in the old junker jerks his car from lane to lane and roars up on someone's tail before jamming on the brakes? Of course, he's got his "I'd rather be racing" bumper sticker, so everyone thinks he's a racer. When you hear about racing having a poor image, he's the kind of guy we can thank for it. He should know better. When the pros are on the track or on the highway, we know that the smoother we are behind the wheel, the better.
That's right, Darrell. Now, that's not to say that the Winston Cup stock car doesn't create a lot of G-forces at racing speed. It does. It has powerful acceleration, even better braking force, and the cornering forces can really be a pain in the neck. Professional drivers feed on those forces, and you should try to do the same in your street driving. Take the brakes, for example. If you feed on the brakes by smoothly backing out of the throttle and gradually adding brake pedal, the forces build slowly, and you can slow your car without startling anyone. The same goes for steering. You can't yank the steering wheel like you're setting the hook on a bass. If you do, your passengers would be bouncing off the doors and each other if you start a turn by snapping the wheel over. Instead, feed the steering. You'll end up turning the wheel the same amount as the jerky driver, but you'll get there slower, allowing others in the car to gradually get used to the cornering forces. The same is true coming out of the corner. Don't snap the wheel back straight. Feed it out, reducing the centrifugal force gradually down to zero. Avoid being a jackrabbit at stoplights. Squeeze the throttle out. Don't jump on it. If a race car driver jumps on the gas coming off a slow corner, he's going to end up with a handful of tail-out slides. But if he squeezes it down towards the floor, he can keep the right balance on the car and be faster down the next straight. You should try to be smooth. Use the engine to get up to speed. Use full throttle if you need to, but squeeze it down, keeping the accelerator a secret from your passengers. Any other words of wisdom, DW?
Remember, when you're on the street, drive like you've got an egg between your foot and the pedal and a hot cup of coffee sitting on your dash. Drive smoothly and drive like a pro.
On October the 1st, Richard Petty announced that 1992 would be his final season behind the wheel. Now, while some of you had the opportunity to see a small portion of his press conference on your local news, we thought you might like an insider's look at more comments from that historic day. Hosted by our own Dr. Jerry Punch.
He has captured 7 Winston Cup championships and won an unparalleled 7 Daytona 500s by STP. His 200 career victories make him the winningest driver in the history of Major League Motorsports. There is no doubt he is the undisputed king of stock car racing. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Petty.
Since 1967, I've been hearing retirement rumors, and so just like I said, I told y'all I'd get you all together and tell you exactly what I was going to do, when I was going to do. And I'm not retiring, okay? So you can start off with that. The deal is that it will be my last year next year, and it will be known as a Fan Appreciation Tour. That's going to be the name of the tour that we're going to do. It's not a farewell tour because I'm not going anywhere. It's a Fan Appreciation Tour. Without the fans, you all wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be here, STP, Pontiac, all our sponsors would not be here. So after 34 years, I figured that I can take the time, and all our sponsors can take the time to go to the fans or stay with the fans and say, look, we appreciate the 34, 35 years that you've been involved with racing, that, you know, we're saying thank you back to the fans. That's really what the whole situation is.
There were numerous dignitaries on hand to pay tribute to Richard Petty, including Bill France Jr., the President and Chief Executive Officer of NASCAR.
Richard Petty made his mark in the way he touched people, in the way that everyone who walked away from him felt he was their friend. A lot of you may have heard the story about Richard, about a kid who's hanging on the fence, yelling his name over and over, hoping he'd come over and say hello, maybe even sign an autograph. This small boy was at North Wilkesboro with his father and was standing outside the pit fence. He'd been looking for Richard, just hoping to see him for a while. When he finally did see him, he couldn't help himself. He started yelling Richard's name, trying to get his attention. Finally, Richard heard him, turned around and walked over to the little boy. He talked a few minutes with him and signed an autograph. That few minutes of time made an incredible impression on that boy. Richard Petty became his hero that day, an idol he would never forget. Several years later, that little boy, now grown, made Richard Petty part of his contract. That's the reason NBA All-Star Brad Daugherty wears number 43 when he plays for the Cleveland Cavaliers. While we'll miss our friend Richard Petty, the driver who has truly earned the title, the king of stock car racing, we are very happy that our friend Richard Petty, the car owner, will be with us for many years to come. Richard, we wish you the best of luck the rest of this year and in your final season in 1992. When the 1993 season rolls around, we will miss you on the track, but we'll see you in the garage.
The governor of North Carolina, the Honorable James G. Martin, had these comments.
We have a great deal of pride here in North Carolina about Richard Petty, about what he has meant to the sport, about what he's meant to our state and to our people. And we're here today to celebrate this man, to celebrate his skill, to celebrate his personal and professional integrity. I'll let you in a little secret. It's nice being governor, but I often wonder what it'd be like to be king, because that's what Richard has been in stock car racing. This king has seen a lot of governors come and go. You've given us a great ride over these years, these past 34 and the 35th to come. And I know race fans share some anxiety of the day that'll come when 43 will be parked. But what a ride you've given us. Like your father before you and like your family carrying on beyond. You've done so much for this sport to write the book on what it means to be a great champion and a great American. And I say to you, God bless you and your family.
Yes, I probably feel like that I've sacrificed a lot. I think he was only around for one time when we had one child that was born. The rest of the time he was racing. He missed most all the graduations, the dance recitals, the music recitals. He missed it all. But even though he missed it, the kids, they loved him and they've supported him, and we're going to continue to support him. And the one thing that I probably get asked more than anything in the world, people come up to me and they say, "Don't you just worry about your husband?" And I said, I always tell them, I say, yes, I do. But my philosophy of life is that I'm just thankful that I've been a part of Richard Petty's life. And no matter what happens from this day on, I can look back with no regrets. And I'm just thankful for that.
In the second issue of NASCAR Video Magazine, our poll of top riders picked Richard Petty as the top stock car driver of all time. Here's our tribute to the King.
When you stop and look at the Winston Cup record book, his numbers are staggering. Most career wins, 200. Most wins in a season, 27 in 1967. Most consecutive wins, 10 in 1967. 18 consecutive seasons with at least one win. Over 1,100 career starts. 7 Winston Cup championships. 7 Daytona 500 wins. No one even comes close to most of these numbers, and probably never will. Personally, I thought I knew something about driving until I raced against Richard Petty. Just being on the track with him showed me how much I had to learn before I could even call myself a race car driver. He just flat out blew my mind. But the story of his greatness goes beyond what he does on the racetrack. It's the man himself. He transcends the sport. Win or lose, he's always the same. There's that big smile, the love and respect he has for the fans, as well as the love they have for him. Man, you can feel it. He helped carry the sport from the small-town dirt tracks to the major league sport it has become today. In 5 different decades, he's been the driver all others have been measured against. There's no doubt in my mind, Richard Petty is the greatest stock car driver of all time.
In 1992, as Richard Petty makes his fan appreciation tour, be sure to watch for a special edition dedicated to the King. Well, that just about does it for this issue of NASCAR Video Magazine. I hope you enjoyed it. Once again, this is your magazine, and I want to know what you'd like to see. So send your comments to Benny Parsons, care of NASCAR Video Magazine, 1435 North Meridian Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46202. I'll see you with our next issue. So long, everyone.
It'll be a big disappointment if you walk out my door. It'll be a major setback if you don't come back no more. So don't you even think about leaving. Oh, girl, I couldn't take it if you up and said goodbye. You best be trying to shake that gone for good look in your eye. Don't you even think about leaving. Before you take another step, before you cross the line, better stop and catch your breath and get staying on your mind. Don't you even think about leaving. Tell me what you want. Ain't there something I can do? Put yourself in my shoes, girl, I wouldn't walk on you. Don't you even think about leaving. Oh, before you take another step, before you cross the line, better stop and catch your breath and get staying on your mind. Don't you even think about leaving. What's so funny, why you laughing? What on earth is going on? You really had me going, could've swore that you were gone. Don't you even think about leaving. Why don't you even think about leaving?